Okay, I want to dive in and do a post-mortem on the sudden and unfortunate demise of my most recent open stage hosting gig. And I specifically want to focus on a couple areas that I think are broadly applicable to open stage hosting in general. Those being number one, kind of being at the negotiating table, knowing your worth, advocating for your position, and as the great Kenny Rogers says, no one wanted to fold them. No one wanted to walk away. No one wanted to run. Um, and then the second area is that some red flags and warning signs of low venue commitment or low venue engagement. Things that, in this particular case, I may have noticed and kind of dismissed or crossed my fingers and just kind of hoped would work themselves out with a little more time. Kind of making the excuse, I got plenty to work. I got plenty to worry about right now, and those things can wait. We can iron those out in a little bit. I'll pin that to the board for later, and now there is no later. And in fact, looking back in hindsight, I probably should have addressed those, and maybe that would have even steered this clear of the trouble the shawls it ultimately ran aground on. So before I actually dive into those, I know that my smarmy, silly style runs the risk of making this seem like sour grapes, and I want to be clear that this was ultimately a courteous and professional discussion between myself and an emissary of the venue, where we ultimately just could not come to a meeting of the minds or see eye to eye about our evolving positions, and in particular, their desire to renegotiate my fee as a way to make the numbers work. The numbers having been determined to not be working. So this could sound like sour grapes, but ultimately we just kind of couldn't come to an agreement and mutually agreed to part ways. And I don't have any hard feelings, and I hope that they do succeed doing something else with that evening. However, I also have a counterpoint to their position. That's no mystery. While I respect them as a venue, I also think they are incorrect in their assessment of what's going on, and I think that I would offer my perspective separately, and that's basically flows from what I just said. We couldn't come to a meeting of the minds. So let's get into it. The negotiating table. I've touched on this, sort of this nature of the business, in another of this storied series of Open Stage Diaries. I talked about sort of the dual nature. You're the host. You're in the middle of two different customers that you have to serve. The venue, where you have to deliver an event that is worthy of their space and worthy of the expense that they're going to incur to have you put on the event. Typically, it's going to be a slow night for them, and they want to see an improvement over just having the doors open. And on the other hand, an important customer, of course, is the participants. Like, if you can't deliver a great experience to the participants, then your open stage is going to wither on the vine. And you have to get that part right. So it's always been my philosophy that, by focusing on being the best open stage host you can be and doing the hosting part right, that's where you start. Other things flow from that. However, it also does follow that you're going to have to do some things to do right by the venue. Mostly that you have to do everything that you can in your power to get the word out about the existence of of your open stage. You have to go out there and compete, you know, to bring in people and drum up some interest. But you shouldn't have to do that alone. So let's talk about knowing your worth. So, kind of flowing from that idea, you need to self-assess at all times if you are in fact doing the best you can do, and other ways that you can improve your hosting and the product you deliver. But whatever that assessment is, you need to stand firm and confident in it. So, like in my case, I can confidently say I'm a really good open stage host. I'm a pretty great open stage host. I know how to do this, and I deliver on the essentials, the three cornerstones of a good open stage, which I stand by, which are time management. So I make sure everyone, when you come down to play, you get what you came for. You get the time that you were hoping to get. You get your opportunity. The time is sacred. Number 2, great sound. I deliver good sound quickly. You get up and you're going to sound good, sound inspiring, and it's going to be, that in and of itself is fun and engaging for players, especially players who don't have that at the ready, who aren't out there gigging, who aren't, getting good sound on the regular. To get up there, have a microphone, and really hear yourself, and hear yourself in a great space, and just feel like a rock star. That's part of it. That's a huge part of the experience that people crave. And when you go to a stage and the sound is bad, the sound leaves something to be desired, you're a little less inclined to go back to that. And the final thing is a little something extra. What separates you from the other open stages? In my case, it is free video. In my case, it is that I will record your set. I will give you a high quality video and board direct audio of your set to do with as you please. You can post it, you can just listen to it. And for me, that comes from my own experience as a young pup in high school, going religiously to an open stage run by the great John Steidemann, who I patterned my own hosting after, my idol, my mentor from Denver, where this is the pre-digital recording age, where I'd bring a cassette and get a board direct recording of my set from that night. I would listen to those things religiously. I would analyze them. I'd, really critically assess myself, and it was invaluable to my growth as a performer to have that. And so for me, offering that to other people is the little something extra that I do to sort of set myself apart from your typical open stage. So in terms of knowing my worth, that was a little bit long. I know you've all watched the other videos. Why do I even need to repeat myself? You've watched everyone in the storied series of the Open Stage Diaries twice, 3, 4 times even. You've taken copious notes. I know. I'm sorry. I should know better than to repeat myself. Anyway, sorry. Knowing your worth means that ultimately, so like in this case, this came down to them saying, look, we're running the numbers and it's just not working out. Just as an aside, let me tell you what the numbers are here so they wanted this to be a 2-hour open stage instead of the 3-hour open stage. That sort of goes towards those red flags I'm talking about later. The crossing my fingers hoping it's going to work. Which meant, and we were compressing the set times so that I had to basically deliver perfect time management every time if we had a full list, which would be 10 performers, 12-minute sets, 12-minute turnaround between. It would be like one after another, me managing perfect transitions every time. 10 performers get to play, 10 acts get to play. we were averaging, and we'd only done this 8 times. We'd only done it for eight total weeks, which really is just getting started. And we'd had, a healthy turnout. Of course, I was hoping for better, but we had 4.5 on average. So we were almost at 50% capacity on average over the short run of this open stage. For a new open stage, frankly, I'll take it. Like it's a good start. It's a good toehold. It has room for improvement for sure. It's not the best I've ever done, but it's also not something I'm ashamed of or that I feel, I let them down. I don't think that. So I'm going to get to in a moment some elements that more aptly fit under the sort of venue engagement side of things, that might, affect the numbers. But I feel confident. I was delivering a great open stage for those 4.5 acts. The people who showed up got a great experience, and I'll hang my hat on that. But when they're saying to me, for instance, hey, we're running the numbers and the numbers aren't working, what we want to do is get rid of your guarantee, which really is the only expense to running open stage. Everything else is something they're already paying for. The overhead of having their lease, the overhead of being open and having staff who stand ready to serve drinks and do things. The overhead of owning the sound equipment. Now, in my case, they didn't give me a sound person. Most of the time, they hire a sound person. They have a staff sound person who would be present for any show, but in my case, that sort of comes out in the wash. So I might argue that you're basically just paying to be open, because you're paying to be open and have music. And yeah, you're paying me, but I'm doing the job of sound. That was part of the initial negotiation. Anyway, not to get too far in the weeds with this, but they wanted to cut their expense of me by making my payment contingent on achieving a threshold of business at the bar. In other words, if the bar does this much, then we'll pay you after that. We'll pay you a percentage, or we'll pay you something, and let's try to do this on a trial basis and see how it goes. And I just basically very quickly said, look, that's, I respect this as a business. I understand it's not personal, but that's a red line for me. Like, I don't do this I just don't do this on that kind of basis. I said, and this is what I mean by knowing my worth. This was a place where, okay, I knew I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm a very good open stage host, and I can create a different opportunity. I don't have to accept terms that I don't like. I don't have to accept this. I don't owe them a renegotiation of my fee. I can go get my fee from somebody else, and I can deliver the thing I do, which is definitely worth the fee I charge. I am worth the fee I charge. And I think that we as musicians, and we as hosts, and we as people navigating an uncertain economy can tend to be overly flexible if pressure's put on us. And I'm not trying to say that this was a nefarious plot. I think that they're like, well, that's what we'd like, so let's ask for it. That's what's in our interest, so let's ask for it. But for me to draw the line right there, that's what I would encourage you to be prepared to do. And it's not as if I saw it coming and I had a chance to rehearse it. It's that I already knew. I've already thought through the justification of why I do what I do, the way I do it, and that includes why I get a guarantee, why I would only host an open stage for a guarantee, and for the number I like sort of, as my friend Jay Harris used to call it, the leaving the house money. So there's a certain amount of money that I need to leave the house and go do a bunch of work to host an open stage, and that includes there's work that happens beforehand, promoting it. There's work that happens afterwards, following through on the extras. So anyway, when you sit at the negotiating table, you need to know very firmly where your red lines are, and that's my advice to you as an open stage host: is know your worth, be confident. If it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out, and it can work out somewhere else. And just be able to walk away from a deal that you're not going to be happy with. And I would not have been happy with that deal. And so that's why we parted ways. Looking back on it, there were definitely some things, as I mentioned, that I didn't tend to, that were perhaps you might call red flags, you might just warning signs, trouble signs. And I want to talk a little bit about those. And they all kind of fit into, they were all telling a story of low venue engagement, low venue commitment. That in this partnership of trying to make this open stage work, there's me working hard to host the thing, but there should also be them working hard to make it work from their end too. And that includes promoting it in advance, and that includes the sort of horses to water thing of feeding the horses, having carrots for the horses. So sugar cubes, they needed some sugar cubes. So these were some of the things in no particular order that I kind of didn't address, and now feel a little bit silly that I didn't just call it like I see it. So to start with, and this is the least of them, is there's a reason that I like my open stages to be 3 hours. It gives me lots of tools for time management so that I can make sure I'm delivering a great experience for everybody. Also, it gives me flexibility for if we are blessed with the problem, if we have too many people, we have some walk-ins, I've got some options. I've got some tricks up my sleeve, again, with time management, where I can make sure that everybody gets a little, you're a late walk-in, I'll make sure you at least get up for one song. And here's the sort of, the subtle kind of secondary issue. When it's 3 hours, it's more of a happening. It's more of a community. We're all here. You're more likely to get a first drink, to get a second drink, to get something to eat, to support the venue in that way. Imagine the sort of ridiculous opposite where it's a 30-minute open stage. A lot of people they're going to be focused on, get on the list, and I'm going to be gone in 30 minutes. Then be thinking about what they do next, what they're going to do next. Maybe we can slip on over to open stage X. I don't have time to eat. I don't have time to eat something here. I don't have time. And so that's a very extreme, weird example, but the longer you make it, the more relaxed it is. And the more relaxed it is, the more people just want to enjoy themselves and do the things they do when they go out. Eat, drink, be merry. So I spent a little too long on that one, but that was something that I was uncomfortable, but it was like, that was a compromise I had to make, because that was for them, that was a hard stop. They only had this one window. They only had 6:30 to 8:30. And it had to be over at 8:30, because at 9 they're booking other things. It's another show starts at 9. So that's one thing. This one is more important. And this one, it's on me that I didn't say anything about for sure. So in the lead up to every week's open stage, I put posts on social media in about approximately 40 Facebook groups. And I keep track of which ones are getting some engagement, which ones are getting people asking questions, commenting, liking, sharing. I had a Craigslist ad, and again, I kept track of some of those people. I'm responding to any comment that comes back on the Craigslist ad, and I'm answering questions. And those people, what's my turnover? What's my conversion rate of people who are asking questions to people who are then coming down? I registered the open stage with all the local registries of area open stages. Something that, again, one of the things they don't tell you about open stages, but you'll find out real quick if you try to, if you're going out of town, you want to find open stages. This is a really hard thing to Google. It's really hard to find out and be confident about what open stages are actually happening right now in town X. Are they active? When are they? If you were tasked with coming up with a list of open stages in Minneapolis just by online research, it's a bit more of a chore than you think it's going to be. So I try to help that along by making sure that if you type open stage Portland, I'm going to show up in your top 10 list, in your top 10 results rather. So I'm doing that, and I'm also getting out the word to the community that has come to my open stages in the past, letting them know through various means. I'm going to open stages, and I'm talking about this open stage. I'm handing out stickers, that I had made up for this open stage. I have an eye-catching flyer that is, being posted online. I have a playlist on YouTube that is getting shared and promoted of the videos that myself and others have made from the footage of that I provided in the open stages. So again, we're kind of getting people interested in this idea of that they're going to get a free video. So I'm doing those things. And I talked earlier about it's a team effort and I need to do my part. Venue also needs to do their part. And they have some different avenues, different circles that they touch. Here's a place where I really felt like the venue did not, this was a major red flag that I ignored, is that this venue, although they have a very actively maintained events page on their website that describe basically everything they have going on except this open stage, they only posted about a couple of them. Out of the 8, I think they posted 2 early flyers, and then subsequent weeks did not mention this. So if you're trying to answer that question and you just say, let me look at, is there an open stage going off at this place? And you Google it and you arrive at their website, you're not going to get the correct answer, which is yes, there is. This week there is. You're not going to get that answer. So why would you come down to check when it, by all accounts, it looks like, well, they keep an events calendar. It doesn't say open stage, so I assume they don't. So they didn't do that. They have social media, and the full extent of what they did on social media is most weeks, day of, they posted or reposted whatever I posted on Instagram in their story. As you know, if you are on Instagram, it ain't nothing, but it ain't much. So that was a kind of low effort. And I kind of brushed it off because I knew that their social media coordinator position was a little bit in flux, and they were kind of, so I just sort of brushed it off as they'll get that straightened out. They'll straighten out their end of things. This will improve. What I also didn't mention is that they didn't have a physical flyer, even though I'd made an eye-catching poster, and they'd made a poster at one point in time. Nothing which came of it. They didn't have a poster in the space. And this was something that we talked about in the initial planning stage and negotiation of trying to seal the deal. What are we going to do about this? Well, here's what they have this very vibrant jam culture. They have jams 3 nights a week at this place. And in fact, that's how I got put in touch with them, is that people who used to be regulars at my last open stage are regulars at these jams, heard the owner talking about, yeah, I'm thinking about getting an open stage for this other night. And they're like, oh, you should get Cody. Cody doesn't have an open stage running right now. He's great. I don't know if they said he's great. I assume they did because somehow I got put in touch with him. So I'm having people recommend, and obviously there's crossover. Other people who are at the jam might be interested in coming to an open stage and doing something slightly different. Obviously, there's differences, of course, between jams and open stages. A topic for a different video, different time. But if you don't already know that, but there's a lot of symbiotic contact there. A lot of people who like to go to jams also will go to an open stage. No poster up. Nothing that's sort of saying to this captive audience, hey, we got something else going on that you might be interested in. So that's a missed opportunity. And I didn't really go into that. They didn't change their hours of operation on Google. So if someone is inclined to come in and they got as far as putting it into Google Maps because they want to get directions to come on down here, Google Maps is going to warn them, hey, this place is closed. They're not open right now. I actually had people mention that to me, and then, of course, I'm trying to submit to Google, a correction. And I kind of left it at that. I should have, again, made mention of this. Anything that was a problem, I should have made mention of. And I really didn't. I just kind of was focusing on, getting used to the challenges on my end. The new challenges to time management and the new challenges to running unfamiliar equipment and more complicated equipment. And then finally, this one I am a little bit disappointed in myself, because this one, of all of them, I mean, all of these are important, but this one is something that is a pet peeve of mine. It's something that I have condemned other open stages for. I've talked about this in reviews, and basically it's been part of a significant contributing factor to my own bad reviews of other open stages, which I don't give a lot of bad reviews, but a criticism that I levy when calling it like I see it is, when you're at an open stage and the house music is still on somewhere else in the venue. To me, that's really unsupportive, super distracting, disconcerting for less seasoned players. I've had to deal with that as a more seasoned player. I can focus and tune it out. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it, but I have the tools to deal with it. A less seasoned player, someone who, typical open stage players are not super seasoned players. That's the point. For them to come in and have a distracting noise in the background, that's almost inexcusable. And I would go into the other room and I would say, hey, can you turn that down or turn that off? And they would turn it down. That was poor hosting on my part. That's on me. I needed to make an issue of that. I needed to say, I really need you to turn that off. I mean, I've got singer-songwriters in here, and they're having to play while listening to this other music. And I think that, and I understand why they do it, because again, I mentioned this jam culture, and the layout of this place is, there's the bar, then there's this weird barn door that isn't exactly soundproof, but it does some. And then through the barn door is sort of the stage and the music area. So these rooms are separated and the barn door is kept closed, except for people traversing it. And I think that I mentioned this jam culture. The jam is not like a classic rock jam where people are playing songs, It's more of a free-form, impromptu, just what happens when you get together with other musicians, you're trying to create something spontaneous. that has its, for the players, that is engaging and fun for the people who are actually playing at the time. However, it is not something that the staff or people in the other room necessarily are hanging on and listening to intently. Um, while some people do like to listen to that, and certainly I love jazz and I love good improvisation, and the language of music, I can understand how they've gotten in the habit of like kind of segregating that and saying, if you want to listen to the jam, go in the other room. Here in this room, we're going to listen to this background music. So whatever, Sirius FM or what have you. But that is super unsupportive. And in my view, that one of those differences between jams and open stages, but your typical jam where people are playing like songs, there should not be competing music. There should not be competing music on the stage. And that is a place where I let the players down because I didn't handle that. I didn't stand a little more firmly that I don't want that. I can't have that. So I ultimately have to take responsibility for that. And that if I were a player and that was distracting me, I wouldn't come back. So yeah, that's on me. And that's going to definitely be a lesson learned, is that I will never let that happen again. I'm going to stand very firm on that from here on out. That's probably enough stuff. So in any event, it's how the cookie crumbles. Sometimes stuff just doesn't work out. This is very unusual, for me. This is the only time that I've ever had, like, that I've in essence been fired or been asked to, like, do it for free, which is honestly, part of me is a little bit insulted, but at the same time, I understand why they think that that's in play. Nonetheless, I'm confident that I'm going to land on my feet and that this doesn't, this hiccup, I wish that we'd worked better together, and I wish that I'd done more to assert what I needed from them and to, kind of lead the charge for how we should work together. Because what I failed to recognize ultimately in the end of the day is that they were new to this and they didn't really know how to do it. And I needed to lead them along. I needed to lead them to a more successful experience. And I needed to give them the chance to refuse to be willing to do the right things rather than to be overly respectful or to, under the guise of respecting our separate bailiwicks, let them handle their part and I'll handle my part. I needed to basically tell them, hey, I needed to coach them to give me what I needed. All right. So until next time, see you at the open stage.